Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us on VLGA Connect and our regular newsroom feature today with the CEO of the VLGA. Always lovely to see you, Kathryn Arndt.
Hi, Chris. And what a day it is today. It's quite a momentous day in Australian history as we have women across the country marching as we speak at this very moment in respect of what is called the Enough campaign, in recognition of, I think this time a month ago, we heard allegations from a former staffer who alleged that she was raped in Parliament House. So today, women across the country have united to march. And in fact, a bus was organised from Melbourne. It left in the early hours this morning at 3 a.m. to arrive in Canberra at 12 today to enable some women from Victoria to participate up there in Canberra. And I think with what we've seen in recent months, in recent years, that this is a conversation that has been long overdue. And look, I will be very interested to see how the marches today and the speeches that are being delivered as we're talking right now are portrayed in the media, and what are the messages and the learnings that come out of that.
So yes, March for Justice as we record this episode, and marches happening all over the country from what I'm seeing of the pictures on the news today. It's really a groundswell, isn't it, with a whole lot of things coming to a confluence is what I'd sort of call it.
Absolutely.
At the moment, Kathryn, when you think about the work that's happening around gender equity, the sexual harassment survey that VLGA did for local government and the public sector, it must be said. One thing that I can't quite get my head around, Kathryn, out of this Brittany Higgins story is when you read the details, you unpack it, but the lack of a support system for someone who works in Parliament House. There's no HR department, for example. That just boggled my mind.
It is perplexing, Chris. And when we think about, in fact, this time last year, so in March 2020, Kate Jenkins launched a report into an investigation she did into sexual harassment in the workplace. So she led that investigation a year ago, and the report found that Australian laws are complex and confusing for victims to navigate. The Australian Human Rights Commission, of which Kate leads as the Commissioner, made 55 recommendations to improve the system. And the inquiry, in fact, was an 18-month-long inquiry. So the Commissioner, Kate Jenkins, tabled that report, which looked at sexual harassment in Australian workplaces, to the federal government, this time a year ago. And the Attorney General, Christian Porter, at the time, and the Minister for Women, Marise Payne, said the government would take time to carefully consider the report and its recommendations. Now, listening to the Minister for Family and Social Services speak this morning, Anne Ruston, within that portfolio is the domestic violence portfolio. It's quite evident that the government have not moved on any of those 55 recommendations. That is, that none of them have been implemented to date. So as you pointed out, Parliament is a workplace. There are thousands of staff who are employed. It is an Australian workplace, and it's very difficult to reconcile why what looks to be that there are different standards of support and protection in Parliament as a workplace. But not only that, clearly the Commissioner's report of a year ago found that Australian workplaces across all of Australia and all sectors were lacking in, as the report found, that the laws were too complex and difficult to navigate and needed to be overhauled. So there are some really concerning, reports out there. And we, in fact, heard from the Victorian Auditor General and the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commissioner, Kristen Hilton, a few weeks ago on our VLGA Connect program, talking about the findings from the auditor's investigation into sexual harassment in the local government sector. And that report concluded that councils are not providing workplaces that are free from sexual harassment, and more than 1 in 4 survey respondents said that they'd experienced workplace sexual harassment in the last 12 months. So very damning findings, I think, for the sector. And I mean, this is why we have women around Australia marching in protest today.
And the issues are so endemic, it's really hard to see how all of this is going to be resolved, and not helpful. I don't want to get political, don't normally, when the politicians won't actually come to the people to have the conversation. That, to me, says someone's getting bad advice.
Yes, it is disappointing indeed, Chris. And I must say well done to those MPs who have chosen to go out and meet the women who, and well, it's not just women who are there.
No, it's not.
And meet the people who have taken time out of their days away from their families to want to talk about something that's so important.
So where do you think is this going, Kathryn? What's likely to happen next?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, Chris, but I do hope that the voices of those people are heard and listened to. So I hope that the federal government moves on the report that's already been tabled by Kate Jenkins. I know that Kate has been engaged now to lead another review of sexual harassment, particularly in Parliament. But there is already a report with 55 recommendations out there that needs to be actioned as soon as possible. We're looking forward to hosting Dr. Nikki Vincent, Victoria's inaugural Gender Equality Commissioner, on our program on the 31st of March. And we'll have the opportunity, Chris, to talk to Nikki about the Gender Equality Act, what that means for local government, but also other levels of government as well, particularly in Victoria, as that's the jurisdiction that has coverage of. And then, of course, there are the 11 recommendations from the Auditor General's report looking at sexual harassment in the local government sector. Clearly, the work that the VLGA has been leading for a number of years, that is to encourage and support women to stand in local government elections, is important, and it's important that that continues not just 6 months out from an election, but that it is funded sufficiently so that it becomes embedded, and so that we do reach parity, we do reach 50-50 by 2025 for women councillors, women in elected elected officer roles. The issue, of course, we have, and even if we look at the VARGO report into the local government sector, is that there are many women employed in local government, but we don't have the same levels of women employed in leadership roles. And of course, that's where the decision making occurs, the policy making, and that's where the culture is set. So getting parity is important.
Absolutely, it is. All right, Kathryn, we'll keep discussing the issue, keep highlighting it, as you say, Nikki Vincent on VLGA Connect very soon. We also have coming up some other terrific VLGA Connect interviews. For example, Stuart Mosley from the Victorian Planning Authority is going to join us for an update. But this Thursday night, I think we need to give a plug to a terrific executive panel, which just happens to be all female, Kathryn.
It does. And talking about that very important topic of community well-being, but particularly in this COVID environment. So we've got the acting CEO of the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham joining us on the panel with a director from that same council, along with Hawkesbury City Council director, and also our own Moreland CEO, Kathy Henderson, looking at economic and community well-being in a pandemic environment, and some of the initiatives that councils across the globe have implemented to not only stimulate the economy, but to focus on their community's well-being. So really looking forward to that second Global Live panel, where doing that in conjunction with LG Pro Victoria and also LGIU Australia. And people can look, if you'd like to register for that, have a look on our website.
Yes, you and I, Kathryn, had the opportunity to meet with the panellists last week to have a discussion about the discussion, if that makes sense. And there's going to be some great stories, I think, coming out on some of the innovation and quick thinking and quick footwork that people have done in council land during the pandemic to keep communities connected and serviced to the level that they need.
And Chris, what a fantastic uptake we've been having with the Local Government News Roundup. We're up to podcast episode 3, and tell me what are you finding with some of the feedback you're getting?
I'm getting a terrific response, Kathryn. Thank you. It's really surprised me. We're only a week really in to this. We've got lots of Victorian listeners, but surprisingly quite a lot of listenership from outside of the state. And even now, there's one person in France. I don't know who it is, that has downloaded every episode so far. And we've had some England listening and some USA listening. So what we're trying to do is just cover stories of broad interest to people with an interest in local government from right across the country and beyond. And it seems it's striking a chord.
It absolutely is. And it's, of course, as we've talked about, an extension of the VLGA Connect program. It follows almost a reverse SBS World News format in that we cover off the local, national and a little bit of international news. And those international listeners, I think, also reflect the increasing engagement we're having through our VLGA Connect live panels, and also the partnership we've established with LGIU, which is an international think tank in the local government sector. And it's pleasing to see that, you know, the issues are relevant. It doesn't really matter where you are. The initiatives might be slightly different, but what councils are trying to achieve and some of the complexities and challenges that they face are in fact very similar. So I'm not surprised that the uptake's been so great, and the VLGA is very pleased to support this production. And of course, with you at its helm, Chris, it's fantastic listening for any of our viewers who may not have caught up on it.
Thank you. Can I just say thank you to you, Kathryn, for supporting me in this harebrained idea that I did have to do a local government news podcast in my spare time. I'm having fun doing it, but to have the VLGA on board is just terrific.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Chris, to be working with you again on that initiative.
So look out for the latest episode, which includes an interview with Councillor David Clark from Pyrenees Shire, who's the new president of the Municipal Association of Victoria. We talked about the new board last week, and I got to spend some time with David, who was very generous with his time for an interview this week. And coming up, I have an interview with the new CEO of LG Pro Victoria, speaking of LG Pro, Jill Brown, so people can find out a bit more about Jill as she takes up the role.
Oh, terrific. Well, I look forward to hearing the episode with Jill. I have listened to the interview with David, and I thought you were both very generous with your time, and it was good to hear what some of his sort of thoughts were about the MAV's focus over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Kathryn. That's probably all the time we have. It's been a special March for Justice edition, really, and we look forward to seeing some real change coming from the efforts that so many people have gone to. It all started, I think, with a tweet a few weeks ago, and look at where it is now. That's
right. That is the power of the people. That is the grassroots movement saying enough is enough and marching for justice. And as you can see, Chris, we're today wearing black to reflect the somberness and seriousness of the issue, and I guess look forward to seeing something change.
Indeed. All right. Good note to leave it on. Thank you, Kathryn. Great to catch up as always. Look forward to seeing you in the newsroom next week.
See you then, Chris.
Kathryn Arndt, the CEO of the VLGA, with us on the newsroom feature here from VLGA Connect. See you again soon.